The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the courthouse, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floors. The air inside the building was thick with anticipation. People whispered to each other as they found their seats. This trial was expected to draw attention from the entire city because of the high-profile individuals involved. Journalists with cameras moved quietly along the aisles, trying not to disturb the courtroom, but also hoping to capture the reactions of the spectators. Detective Ryan entered first. He carried himself with confidence as if he owned the courtroom. His shoes clicked loudly on the floor as he walked toward the front, where the lawyers' tables were. He was known for his sharp mind, quick thinking, and the ability to sway a jury. Ryan was also known for his arrogance. He believed that his clever words could unsettle anyone, no matter how experienced they were. Across the room, Judge Angela Harris prepared to enter. Unlike Ryan, she did not seek attention. Her presence was quiet but powerful. She had been a judge for many years, and she had earned a reputation for fairness, calmness, and unwavering focus. People respected her not because she demanded it, but because she had always shown it through her actions. As she entered the courtroom, a hush fell over the crowd. Spectators straightened in their seats, and even the reporters paused to focus their cameras. Ryan's eyes narrowed slightly as he noticed Judge Harris. He had heard of her reputation but believed that he could test her patience. He smirked, thinking that today he would show everyone that even the most respected judge could be unsettled. He imagined the headlines that might follow, picturing himself as the detective who exposed flaws in the courtroom. The courtroom clerk called the session to order, and the noise faded. Judge Harris approached the bench with slow, deliberate steps. She adjusted her robe and looked around the room with calm eyes. Her gaze did not linger on anyone in particular, but it had a way of making people feel both acknowledged and measured. Ryan felt a flicker of uncertainty but quickly pushed it aside. He was confident after all. The trial began with the usual formalities. Lawyers stood to make introductions. Witnesses were sworn in and documents were handed to the court staff. Ryan leaned back slightly in his chair, observing everything with a sharp eye. He watched how people reacted to Judge Harris, noting the respect and attention she commanded. He thought to himself that he could change that he could disrupt the order and make the court notice him instead. As the proceedings continued, Ryan decided it was time to act. He interrupted the judge with questions that seemed small but were designed to annoy her. His tone was casual, almost mocking, as if he were pointing out that she had overlooked something minor in a previous case. Some people in the courtroom shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to react. The air was heavy with tension and whispers began circulating. Judge Harris did not raise her voice. She simply listened, her eyes steady and her expression calm. She had encountered disrespect before, but she had never allowed it to influence her decisions. She waited for the right moment to respond, knowing that a measured reply would carry more weight than a sharp retort. Ryan, however, mistook her calmness for hesitation. He leaned forward and spoke louder, attempting to embarrass her in front of the spectators. "Your Honor," he said, his voice carrying through the room. "Are you sure that decision you made last year was correct? Many people think it was a mistake." His smirk widened as he looked around, hoping for reactions. Some people frowned while others whispered to each other. A few reporters scribbled notes quickly, sensing a possible confrontation. Judge Harris paused briefly, then responded. Her voice was steady, clear, and filled with authority. "Detective Ryan, the court expects professionalism at all times. The focus here should remain on the case, not on personal opinions or attempts to undermine this court." Ryan chuckled softly, thinking she was intimidated. He decided to press further, raising his voice slightly to gain the attention of everyone in the room. "Oh, I didn't realize we had to walk on eggshells in your courtroom," he said. His tone was mocking and he leaned back in his chair, waiting for the laughter or murmurs that he assumed would follow. Instead, the room grew quieter. People looked at him with a mix of surprise and discomfort. Some of the spectators exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. The lawyers at their tables looked uneasy, and even the court staff straightened in their seats. They had never seen a detective act so boldly in court before. Yet Judge Harris remained calm. She did not flinch, she did not raise her voice, and she did not lose control of the courtroom. Ryan could feel the eyes on him, and he misinterpreted some of the discomfort as admiration for his boldness. He believed that he had captured everyone's attention and that he had succeeded in making the judge seem weak. But he had underestimated her. Judge Harris was not just a figure of authority. She was a symbol of fairness and justice. Her presence alone reminded people of the importance of law and respect. As the trial continued, Ryan kept interrupting. He asked questions that were not relevant to the case, trying to draw attention to minor technicalities. He wanted the courtroom to focus on him and his cleverness rather than the matter at hand. Some spectators whispered in frustration, while others looked at the judge with concern. They were curious to see how she would respond. Judge Harris took a deep breath. She had been patient long enough. She leaned slightly forward, her hands resting lightly on the bench. Her voice, calm but firm, echoed through the room. "Detective Ryan, your behavior is distracting and unprofessional. The court will not tolerate harassment or attempts to undermine the judicial process. Please focus on the matter at hand." Ryan smirked, thinking she was bluffing. He believed that she was afraid of creating a scene. He raised his voice even more, trying to dominate the courtroom. "Your Honor, I am only asking questions that everyone wants answered. I am simply pointing out facts that could be overlooked," he said. Judge Harris lifted her hand slightly, and immediately, the courtroom fell silent. The murmurs stopped, and even Ryan noticed the sudden stillness. Her calm presence seemed to fill the room, and everyone felt the weight of her authority. She looked directly at Ryan and said, "Detective Ryan, your behavior is unacceptable. You have a choice. Respect this court or face the consequences of contempt." For a moment, Ryan felt a twinge of uncertainty. He realized that the confidence he had relied on might not be enough in this courtroom. Judge Harris did not need to raise her voice or make threats. Her calm demeanor, her steady gaze, and her firm words had already shifted the power in the room. The spectators watched in awe. They had come to see a high-profile trial, but now they were witnessing a lesson in authority and respect. Judge Harris had shown that true power in a courtroom did not come from loud words or clever tricks. It came from calm confidence, fairness, and unwavering attention to justice. Ryan leaned back in his chair, a little unsettled. He realized that Judge Harris was not like other people he had tried to intimidate in the past. She did not react to arrogance or attempts to humiliate her. She measured her responses carefully, and her words carried weight far beyond their surface meaning. The trial proceeded, but the tension in the courtroom had shifted. Everyone understood that Judge Harris was in control. Ryan's confidence had been challenged, and he was beginning to see that he could not dominate her with clever words or arrogance. By the end of the morning session, people were talking quietly among themselves. They discussed how Judge Harris had handled the situation with grace and authority. They noted the detective's boldness, but they also realized that his attempts at humiliation had failed. Respect in the courtroom had been restored, and Judge Harris had reminded everyone why she was trusted to uphold the law. As the crowd slowly dispersed for a short break, Ryan sat silently, thinking about what had happened. He had entered the courtroom expecting to control the room, but instead he had learned a subtle and powerful lesson. Judge Harris did not need to argue loudly or insult him. Her calm authority had been enough to remind everyone of the importance of professionalism, respect, and justice. The spectators returned after the break, and the trial resumed. People whispered quietly about the morning's events, and journalists typed quickly on their laptops. Judge Harris's presence remained strong and steady, a quiet reminder that respect and law were not optional. Ryan watched her, a mix of frustration and curiosity in his mind. He realized that this trial would not only test the facts of the case but also test his own understanding of authority. He had underestimated the judge, and he knew that he would need to proceed carefully if he wanted to maintain any sense of control in the courtroom. The courtroom was no longer just a place for a trial. It had become a stage for lessons in dignity, professionalism, and the quiet power of fairness. Judge Harris had proven, without raising her voice or acting aggressively, that true authority comes from patience, wisdom, and integrity. Everyone in the room had noticed the change. The spectators sat taller in their seats, the lawyers prepared more carefully, and even Ryan reconsidered his approach. Judge Harris had set the tone, and the courtroom was ready to continue under her steady and fair leadership. The courtroom resumed after the short break, but the air was thick with tension. Everyone present could feel it, the subtle shift in energy from the morning. Spectators whispered in small groups discussing what had just happened. Some were impressed by Judge Harris's calm authority. Others were surprised at Detective Ryan's bold behavior. No one could take their eyes off the courtroom's front, where the judge and the detective faced each other. Detective Ryan adjusted his tie and leaned forward in his seat, trying to regain the upper hand. He still believed he could challenge Judge Harris and make her look weak. In his mind, he pictured how a clever remark could embarrass her in front of the spectators. He thought if he could find even a small flaw in her reasoning, it would be enough to regain control. Judge Harris, however, remained completely composed. She looked at the detective with steady eyes showing no sign of fear or surprise. Her calm presence reminded everyone in the courtroom that she was the authority here. People were drawn to her confidence. Her colleagues, the lawyers, the spectators, and even some of the staff felt reassured by her steady demeanor. Ryan raised his voice slightly and addressed her. "Your Honor, I am only pointing out inconsistencies that could affect the outcome of this trial. Surely you would not ignore facts that matter to the case." His tone was sharp, designed to make the judge feel defensive. He tried to lean back and smile, hoping to create the impression that he was confident and clever. Judge Harris responded with the same calm tone she had used all morning. "Detective Ryan, the court values focus on facts, relevance, and professionalism. Personal challenges to my authority are not part of these proceedings. Please ensure your questions relate directly to the case." Her words were clear, firm, and precise. Ryan smirked, thinking she was trying to avoid confrontation. He decided to continue, raising his voice a little more. "Your Honor, I am simply asking questions the public wants answered. I am not disrespecting the court. I am only highlighting potential oversights that could affect justice." Judge Harris did not raise her voice. Instead, she shifted slightly in her seat and placed her hands together on the bench. "Detective Ryan, the court will not tolerate disruption. Your intention is understood, but your methods are inappropriate. Relevance and respect are required from everyone, regardless of title." The courtroom had grown silent once again. Spectators, lawyers, and even the jury watched in anticipation. Some whispered quietly, surprised by the detective's boldness and the judge's calm but firm response. Judge Harris's voice carried through the room without needing to be loud, yet it had a power that made people pay attention. Ryan decided to push further. He stood up suddenly, placing one hand on the edge of the lawyer's table. "Your Honor," he said loudly, "I do not understand why such minor errors are dismissed. Surely justice depends on accuracy and accountability. The public has the right to question the court's decisions." His tone was challenging, as if he were daring the judge to respond. Judge Harris remained seated. Her expression was calm, her eyes unwavering. She paused for a moment, allowing everyone to absorb her presence. Then she spoke, her voice firm but quiet enough to require attention. "Detective Ryan, the court operates on the principles of fairness, professionalism, and order. Attempts to humiliate, disrupt, or challenge authority for personal satisfaction are not acceptable. Please return to your seat and conduct yourself appropriately." Ryan's smirk faltered slightly. He could sense that the courtroom had shifted against him. Some spectators were whispering about his behavior, and even the lawyers at the table looked disapproving. He realized that Judge Harris's calm authority was having an effect he had not anticipated. He tried to maintain his confidence, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He leaned against the table slightly, attempting to regain control with his words. "Your Honor, I am merely seeking clarity. The public demands transparency, and I am fulfilling that duty." Judge Harris's gaze remained steady. She raised one hand slightly, signaling him to stop. "Detective Ryan, transparency and accountability are indeed important, but there are proper ways to achieve them. This courtroom is not a stage for personal demonstrations of cleverness. You have a responsibility to follow the rules, remain professional, and respect the court." The murmurs in the room grew quieter as everyone absorbed the judge's words. Her calm tone had a way of emphasizing her authority without needing to raise her voice. People respected her not only because she was a judge, but because she demonstrated fairness, patience, and self-control. Ryan, feeling cornered, tried another approach. He leaned forward, lowering his voice to make it sound like a secret, hoping to create tension. "Your Honor, if these issues are ignored, the integrity of this trial could be questioned. Surely someone must ensure the truth is fully examined." Judge Harris listened carefully. She did not interrupt or react emotionally. Instead, She took a moment to organize her thoughts before responding. Detective Ryan, integrity is indeed crucial. However, integrity cannot be used as a justification for disrespect. The truth is always examined in the context of facts, evidence, and professional conduct. Any attempt to disrupt this process will be addressed according to the law. Ryan felt a twinge of unease. He realized that no matter what he said, the judge's calm authority would overshadow him. Her words were measured, deliberate, and impossible to argue against in front of the courtroom. He had underestimated her ability to handle difficult situations without losing composure. The spectators, meanwhile, were captivated. They had expected a routine trial, but what they were witnessing was a display of professional authority and courage. Judge Harris had faced an attempt at humiliation and had maintained complete control. People whispered quietly about her composure, impressed by the calmness and power of her responses. Ryan tried one last time to assert himself. He spoke louder, hoping that volume would intimidate her. "Your Honor, I have the right to question decisions in the courtroom. If these issues are ignored, justice could be compromised and the public will demand answers." Judge Harris's eyes locked on his. Her calmness remained, but there was a subtle firmness that could not be ignored. "Detective Ryan, the court recognizes your right to speak, but it does not recognize attempts to dominate, insult, or humiliate. If you continue this behavior, the court will take action to restore order." Ryan felt a sudden realization. The room had grown quiet, all eyes focused on him. The whispers and murmurs had stopped, replaced by a tense anticipation. He could sense that the courtroom was waiting for a decisive response from Judge Harris. Judge Harris slowly rose from her seat. Her movement was deliberate, commanding attention without being aggressive. She held a folder in her hand, and the courtroom instinctively fell silent. Everyone knew that something important was about to happen. "Detective Ryan," she began, her voice calm but firm, "your conduct has crossed the boundaries of acceptable behavior in this court. You have attempted to disrupt proceedings, challenge authority without reason, and humiliate the judicial process. This court values professionalism, respect, and order above all else. Your actions will no longer be tolerated." Ryan's confident smile faded slightly. He felt a sense of uncertainty creeping in. He had expected resistance from the judge, but he had not anticipated this level of composure and authority. The courtroom's atmosphere had shifted entirely. Judge Harris continued, "Everyone present in this courtroom has the right to observe proceedings with respect and fairness. Your behavior has threatened that environment. The court will now take steps to ensure that respect is maintained and justice is served without interference." The spectators leaned forward in their seats. Lawyers and jurors exchanged glances, impressed by the judge's calm decisiveness. Ryan sat back, trying to gather his thoughts, realizing that he could not simply talk his way out of this situation. Judge Harris's measured words had already silenced him. The courtroom was no longer a place for his bold attempts at humiliation. It had become a place where authority, fairness, and law were unmistakably clear. Everyone in the room could feel the shift in power. Ryan's mind raced. He had expected to challenge the judge successfully, but he now understood the weight of true authority. Judge Harris did not need to argue loudly, mock, or show anger. Her calm presence, her firm words, and her careful actions had accomplished what volume and arrogance never could. The trial would continue, but the lesson had already been delivered. Respect in the courtroom was essential, and Judge Harris had reminded everyone why she was trusted to uphold it. Detective Ryan now had to consider his actions carefully, knowing that any further attempt to undermine the judge could have serious consequences. The spectators returned from the short break, settling into their seats once more. Everyone watched as Judge Harris returned to the bench, her calm authority restored. Detective Ryan remained seated, a mixture of frustration and realization on his face. The courtroom had become a stage for lessons in dignity, patience, and fairness. The trial would proceed, but the events of that morning would not be forgotten. Judge Harris had shown that true power in a courtroom came from calmness, focus, and adherence to the law. Detective Ryan had attempted to humiliate her, but instead he had learned a lesson in respect and professionalism. That the afternoon sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the courtroom, illuminating the polished floors and the rows of wooden benches. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation. Everyone present, spectators, lawyers, jurors, and court staff, could feel that something significant was about to happen. The trial had already taken a dramatic turn that morning, and now the tension had reached a new level. Detective Ryan sat at the front, still confident but with a subtle tension under the surface. He had tried to dominate the courtroom earlier, interrupting Judge Harris and pointing out supposed errors. He had expected to unsettle her, but her calm authority had shifted the energy of the room. People were watching him now with mixed expressions, curiosity, concern, and some with quiet disapproval. Ryan refused to show any weakness. He straightened his tie, adjusted his jacket, and prepared to continue his challenge. Judge Angela Harris, however, was the picture of calm focus. She remained seated at her bench, her hands resting lightly on the polished wood. Her eyes scanned the courtroom with quiet authority. She had already demonstrated her ability to manage disruptions with patience and clarity, but she knew that a decisive moment was approaching. Detective Ryan had tested her patience and tried to humiliate her, but now she intended to set firm boundaries. Ryan leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing. "Your Honor," he said, speaking loudly to ensure everyone could hear him, "I am only doing my duty. The public expects questions to be asked, and if the court ignores potential mistakes, justice could be compromised." He paused, glancing at the spectators. Some leaned forward in their seats, eager to see the judge's response, while others exchanged uneasy glances. Judge Harris's gaze met his. Her calmness was unwavering. She did not raise her voice, but her words carried authority. "Detective Ryan, the court acknowledges your right to question facts and evidence. However, your methods have crossed the line of professionalism. Repeated interruptions and attempts to humiliate the court are not acceptable under any circumstances." Ryan smirked, thinking he could recover control. He stood up this time, placing both hands firmly on the edge of the table. "Your Honor, I am simply seeking clarity. Surely you do not expect me to remain silent when the integrity of the trial could be at stake." His tone was sharp, almost daring the judge to react. Judge Harris took a slow, deliberate breath. She leaned slightly forward, her hands resting lightly on the bench. Her eyes locked onto Ryan's, and the courtroom fell completely silent. Everyone could feel the tension building. Even the spectators who had been quietly chatting moments before now focused fully on the interaction between the judge and the detective. "Detective Ryan," Judge Harris began, her voice calm but firm, "the integrity of this trial is of utmost importance. However, integrity cannot be achieved through disrespect, disruption, or intimidation. This court operates on principles of fairness, order, and professionalism. Your behavior threatens those principles." Ryan paused, momentarily taken aback by her calm decisiveness. He realized that no matter what he said next, Judge Harris's authority could not be shaken by loud words or clever phrasing. She had shown complete control over the courtroom, and the spectators were noticing it too. Murmurs of surprise and admiration spread quietly among them. Ryan attempted one final strategy. He leaned toward the judge, lowering his voice as if speaking confidentially to create tension. "Your Honor, if these issues are ignored, the truth could be obscured. The public will demand answers, and they will question the court's judgment." Judge Harris remained seated, her eyes steady. She did not react to his tone or his attempt at intimidation. Instead, she carefully organized her words before responding. "Detective Ryan, transparency and truth are indeed vital, but the court will not permit attempts to intimidate, disrupt, or undermine judicial authority. The truth is examined through facts, evidence, and professionalism, not through arrogance or manipulation." The courtroom had grown even quieter. Spectators leaned forward, and even the lawyers at their tables paused to listen. The calm authority of Judge Harris had drawn every eye to her, and everyone could sense that a turning point had arrived. Detective Ryan, who had been confident earlier, felt a subtle shift within himself. He realized that his attempts at dominance had failed. Judge Harris slowly rose from her seat, moving with deliberate, controlled steps. She opened a folder she had placed on her bench and looked at the papers carefully. The courtroom instinctively became silent. Everyone present sensed that something important was about to happen. Her calm and steady presence alone commanded attention. "Detective Ryan," she said, her voice clear and firm, "your conduct has crossed the line of acceptable behavior in this court. You have attempted to disrupt proceedings and humiliate the judicial process. The court cannot and will not allow this behavior to continue. Measures will be taken to restore order and maintain professionalism." Ryan's confident expression faltered slightly. He realized that Judge Harris's measured authority had taken full control of the situation. The courtroom, once dominated by tension and his attempts at humiliation, now reflected her calm and unwavering command. Spectators whispered quietly, and even the lawyers exchanged glances in surprise and admiration. Judge Harris continued, her voice firm and precise. Everyone in this courtroom has the right to a fair and respectful environment. Attempts to intimidate, disrupt, or humiliate are a violation of that right. Detective Ryan, you have been given multiple warnings. The court now takes action to ensure respect and proper conduct are maintained. The room fell completely silent. Ryan realized that the atmosphere had shifted entirely. The confidence he had relied on to dominate the courtroom was gone. He now faced a judge whose authority was undeniable. Her calm, steady words had created a turning point in the trial. Spectators observed quietly, impressed by the display of composure and authority. They had expected a routine legal proceeding, but they were witnessing a demonstration of professionalism, patience, and courage. Judge Harris had faced an attempt at humiliation and disruption, and had maintained complete control. Ryan tried to think of a way to respond, but the weight of the moment pressed down on him. He understood that no clever remark, no loud question or sarcastic comment could alter the situation. Judge Harris had shown that authority did not require anger or aggression. It required calmness, focus, and adherence to principles. Judge Harris continued her measured approach. She addressed the courtroom, ensuring that everyone understood the importance of respect and order. This court is a place of fairness, law, and professional conduct. Attempts to disrupt proceedings will be addressed immediately. All participants are expected to follow the rules and show respect for the judicial process. The spectators nodded silently, realizing the significance of her words. The trial had shifted from a simple legal proceeding to a lesson in authority and respect. Judge Harris's calm demeanor had restored balance, and the courtroom now operated under her clear leadership. Ryan's mind raced. He had entered the trial expecting to dominate and humiliate the judge, but he now understood that he had underestimated her. Her authority was not based on fear or loudness. It was based on fairness, patience, and unwavering focus. The realization was uncomfortable, but it was undeniable. Judge Harris returned to her bench, her calm presence filling the room. She reviewed the documents in front of her carefully, ensuring that the trial could proceed smoothly. Spectators, lawyers, and jurors watched her every move. They had learned an important lesson about professionalism and respect. Ryan remained seated, a mixture of frustration and reluctant admiration on his face. He had been confident in his ability to control the courtroom, but Judge Harris had demonstrated that true authority could not be shaken by arrogance or clever words. Respect and law were far stronger than his attempts at disruption. The trial continued, but the tension had changed. Everyone understood that Judge Harris held full control, and attempts to challenge her authority would be met with firm, calm consequences. Ryan was learning slowly that in this courtroom, arrogance could not outweigh fairness. As the afternoon progressed, the courtroom settled into a rhythm. Lawyers presented their evidence, witnesses testified, and the jury listened attentively. Judge Harris maintained her calm oversight, ensuring that the trial proceeded smoothly and professionally. Ryan observed quietly, realizing that any further attempts to challenge her would be unwise. Spectators continued to whisper quietly, discussing the dramatic events of the day. They were amazed at Judge Harris's ability to remain composed and authoritative, even in the face of a bold and challenging detective. Her leadership had set the tone, and everyone in the courtroom now understood the importance of respect, professionalism, and focus. By the end of the session, it was clear that the turning point had occurred. Detective Ryan had attempted to humiliate Judge Harris, but she had handled the situation with grace, firmness, and authority. The courtroom had witnessed not only a legal trial, but also a lesson in dignity, patience, and the power of calm leadership. Judge Harris had proven that true authority does not rely on anger or intimidation. It relies on fairness, patience, and a deep understanding of law and human behavior. Detective Ryan had learned that lesson. The courtroom was quiet, but the tension was almost tangible. Every person present could feel that the trial was at a turning point. Spectators, lawyers, jurors, and court staff were all focused on Judge Angela Harris, whose calm presence had already commanded the room. Detective Ryan sat at the front, trying to maintain his composure, but inside he felt a growing unease. He had challenged the judge all morning and afternoon, attempting to assert his dominance, but each time she had responded with measured authority that left him unsettled. Judge Harris looked at Detective Ryan with steady eyes. Her calmness had not wavered all day, but now there was a quiet firmness that hinted at a decisive action. She had given multiple warnings, patiently listening to his attempts at disruption and responding with clarity and fairness. But it had become clear that he had not yet understood the importance of respect and proper conduct in her courtroom. "Detective Ryan," she began, her voice firm and steady, "your repeated interruptions and attempts to challenge the authority of this court are no longer acceptable. The court has exercised patience, but it is time to take further action to maintain order and ensure professionalism." Her words were calm, but every syllable carried weight. The courtroom fell completely silent. Even the murmurs of the spectators ceased, replaced by an expectant stillness. Ryan tried to speak, leaning slightly forward. "Your Honor, I am only doing my duty. I am asking questions that the public deserves answers to. Surely you cannot punish someone for seeking clarity." Judge Harris did not react to his attempt at justification. She held her gaze steadily on him, allowing the courtroom to absorb the gravity of the moment. "Detective Ryan, your duty does not include disrespecting the court or attempting to humiliate its officials. The court will not tolerate further disruption. You have been warned multiple times. This behavior is a violation of courtroom rules and decorum." Ryan shifted in his seat, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. He had been confident in his ability to dominate conversations, to draw attention, and to unsettle the judge. But now he realized that her calm authority was absolute. She had not raised her voice or reacted emotionally, yet she had full control over the room. Every word she spoke carried undeniable weight. Judge Harris opened a folder on her bench and carefully reviewed the papers inside. Her hands moved with deliberate precision as she selected a document and placed it in front of her. "The court will now issue an order to address this misconduct. Detective Ryan, you are being held in contempt for your repeated attempts to disrupt and undermine this trial. Effective immediately, you will be taken into custody until this matter is resolved." Gasps filled the courtroom. Spectators whispered in shock, and even some of the lawyers looked surprised. Detective Ryan blinked, unable to process what was happening. He had expected warnings or a stern lecture, but he had not anticipated an immediate order for his arrest. The courtroom had shifted from tension to complete stillness. Every eye was fixed on the judge and the detective, waiting to see how he would respond. Ryan's confident expression faltered. For the first time all day, he felt the weight of the courtroom on him. The calm authority of Judge Harris had overtaken his arrogance. He realized that no clever remark or loud voice could reverse the situation. The courtroom, once a stage for his bold attempts at humiliation, was now a stage for fairness, law, and order. The bailiff stepped forward, his uniform crisp, his expression serious. He approached Detective Ryan and gently but firmly said, "Detective, please come with me. The court has ordered your temporary detainment for contempt." Ryan hesitated, searching for a way to argue or resist. He opened his mouth to speak, but Judge Harris raised her hand slightly. The simple gesture brought immediate silence. Every person in the courtroom felt the power in her presence. "The court will not tolerate further interruptions. All actions will follow the established rules and procedures," she said, her voice calm yet commanding. Ryan slowly stood, realizing that any argument would be futile. The room remained silent except for the soft shuffle of his movements. Spectators leaned forward, captivated by the dramatic turn of events. Cameras clicked quietly as journalists captured the moment, knowing they were witnessing a significant display of judicial authority. As he was escorted toward the side of the courtroom, Ryan glanced back at Judge Harris. Her eyes remained calm, unwavering, and full of quiet strength. She did not gloat, she did not smile, and she did not raise her voice. Yet the effect was absolute. The courtroom understood that her authority was unchallengeable when exercised with fairness and patience. Judge Harris returned to her bench, sitting down with deliberate composure. She adjusted some documents in front of her and continued to oversee the trial. The courtroom, once tense with confrontation, now operated in a state of quiet respect. Lawyers prepared their next arguments, witnesses remained composed, and the spectators observed with renewed admiration. Detective Ryan, meanwhile, was guided out of the courtroom by the bailiff. His steps were slow, and his earlier arrogance was replaced by a sense of reflection. He realized that he had underestimated Judge Harris and the true meaning of courtroom authority. Her calm and fair handling of the situation had shown him that true power did not come from loudness, clever words, or intimidation. It came from patience, professionalism, and the ability to maintain order without anger or aggression. As he left, he could hear whispers from the spectators. Some expressed surprise, others admiration, and many discussed how Judge Harris had handled the situation with poise and authority. Even outside the courtroom, news of the arrest order would spread, serving as a reminder that respect and professionalism in the judicial system were not optional. Back inside, Judge Harris took a moment to ensure that the trial could continue without further disruption. She reviewed the evidence and prepared to resume questioning. Her calm presence reassured everyone that the proceedings would remain fair and orderly. The courtroom had learned an important lesson. Authority, fairness, and respect could not be ignored, and disruption would have consequences. The trial resumed smoothly. Lawyers presented their arguments, witnesses testified, and jurors listened attentively. Judge Harris's calm and firm oversight ensured that everyone understood the importance of following the rules and maintaining professionalism. The courtroom operated with renewed focus, and the tension that had dominated the earlier sessions had been replaced by respect and order. Spectators continued to whisper quietly about the dramatic events. Many noted how unusual it was for a high-profile detective to be placed under arrest in the middle of a trial, and how remarkable it was that Judge Harris had handled the situation without raising her voice. They recognized that her calm authority had restored the balance in the courtroom, ensuring that justice would be served fairly. Detective Ryan, now outside the courtroom, reflected on the events of the day. He had entered with confidence, believing that his clever words and bold actions could dominate the proceedings. He had tried to humiliate Judge Harris and assert his own power, but he had been decisively stopped. The arrest order had been a clear message that respect, professionalism, and adherence to the law were paramount. Judge Harris, seated back at her bench, continued to oversee the trial with quiet authority. She understood that the courtroom was not only a place for legal proceedings, but also a place to teach lessons about fairness, respect, and the power of calm leadership. Her actions had demonstrated that true authority does not require anger, intimidation, or loud confrontation. It requires focus, fairness, and the ability to maintain order with integrity. By the end of the day, the courtroom had returned to a state of normalcy. The trial continued smoothly, and all participants understood the expectations for conduct. Spectators left with a deep appreciation for the judge's calm and measured handling of a challenging situation. Lawyers and jurors recognized the importance of professionalism and respect in maintaining the integrity of the legal process. The events of the afternoon would be remembered for a long time. Detective Ryan's arrest order had served as a powerful reminder that the courtroom is a place of law, fairness, and order, and that no individual, regardless of title or experience, is above the rules. Judge Harris had shown that authority exercised with patience, clarity, and fairness is far more powerful than arrogance or disruption. The courtroom had witnessed a defining moment, not only for the trial but for everyone present. Judge Harris had proven that respect for the judicial process is essential, and that maintaining professionalism is crucial in ensuring justice. Detective Ryan had learned a lesson that day, one that he would carry with him for the rest of his career. The trial would continue, but the story of the arrest order had already made its mark. Spectators, lawyers, and jurors would remember the quiet but absolute authority of Judge Harris, and the dramatic lesson that arrogance and disrespect in the courtroom would not be tolerated. The courtroom had returned to order, guided by fairness, professionalism, and the unshakable presence of a judge committed to justice. The courtroom had settled into a calm rhythm after the dramatic events of the afternoon. Spectators, lawyers, jurors, and court staff all moved and spoke quietly, fully aware of the authority that Judge Angela Harris had demonstrated. The arrest of Detective Ryan for contempt had sent a clear message. This courtroom was a place of respect, professionalism, and law. It was a lesson that no one would forget. Judge Harris returned to her bench, her presence commanding quiet attention. She adjusted some documents in front of her and began reviewing the evidence for the trial. Her calm composure reassured everyone in the courtroom that the proceedings would continue smoothly. Every movement she made reflected her focus and commitment to fairness. Even those who had come to the trial expecting drama now found themselves impressed by her measured, unwavering authority. The lawyers resumed their roles, presenting their arguments and preparing witnesses. The jurors sat attentively, fully engaged with the trial, while the spectators watched quietly, still whispering softly about the earlier events. It was clear to everyone that the courtroom had shifted from a place of tension to a place of order and respect. Judge Harris's actions had restored confidence in the process and reminded everyone of the importance of professionalism. Detective Ryan, meanwhile, had been escorted to a quiet holding area just outside the courtroom. He had time to reflect on the events that had transpired. He had entered the trial with confidence and boldness, believing that his words and actions could challenge anyone. Yet he had underestimated Judge Harris. Her calm and fair handling of his attempts at disruption had left him humbled. He realized that arrogance and cleverness could not replace respect, integrity, and patience. As Ryan sat quietly, he thought about how the courtroom had reacted. Spectators had been captivated not by his boldness but by Judge Harris's authority. Lawyers had been impressed by her professionalism, and the jurors had seen a clear demonstration of fairness and order. He recognized that her calm strength had been far more powerful than anything he could have done. Back inside the courtroom, Judge Harris continued with the trial. She called the next witness, a young woman who had been an important part of the case. The witness approached the stand nervously, but Judge Harris's calm presence put her at ease. The judge spoke to her gently but firmly, guiding her testimony with clarity and patience. The courtroom atmosphere, which had been tense earlier, was now focused on the facts, the evidence, and the pursuit of truth. The lawyers presented their questions carefully, ensuring that their inquiries were relevant and respectful. Judge Harris oversaw the proceedings with a keen eye, maintaining order and guiding the process. She occasionally reminded participants of proper conduct, but her instructions were always calm, clear, and firm. Everyone in the courtroom understood the expectations and followed them, knowing that any disruption would not be tolerated. The spectators observed quietly, appreciating the judge's fairness. They noticed how she managed the trial with patience and authority, ensuring that justice was served without fear or bias. Her actions had left a lasting impression. People realized that the courtroom was not a place for arrogance or disruption. It was a place for fairness, truth, and respect. Detective Ryan, still outside the courtroom, watched through a small window as the trial continued. He saw the same calm authority in Judge Harris that had silenced him earlier. He reflected on his behavior and recognized that his attempts to humiliate the judge had been misguided. He understood now that respect and professionalism were far more important than clever words or bold gestures. After a short period, Ryan was brought back into the courtroom. The bailiff escorted him quietly to his seat. The spectators and jurors observed him with curiosity, noting the shift in his demeanor. He no longer appeared confident or bold. Instead, he seemed reflective, almost humbled. Judge Harris acknowledged his presence but did not make a show of authority. Her calm composure was enough to remind him and everyone else of the lessons learned earlier. The trial resumed smoothly. Witnesses continued their testimony, evidence was examined, and lawyers presented their arguments with careful attention to procedure and relevance. Judge Harris guided the proceedings with focus and fairness, ensuring that the courtroom remained a place of professionalism. The earlier tension had dissipated completely, replaced by a sense of order and respect. Spectators whispered quietly about the remarkable events they had witnessed. Many commented on how Judge Harris had handled the situation with grace, patience, and authority. They admired her ability to maintain control without raising her voice or showing anger. Even the legal professionals present recognized that her actions were a model of judicial leadership. Detective Ryan listened quietly as the trial continued. He realized that his previous attempts to challenge the judge had been ineffective because they lacked respect and professionalism. He understood that Judge Harris's calm authority had been far more powerful than any loud words or clever tactics. He resolved to conduct himself with greater respect and focus for the remainder of the trial. As the day progressed, Judge Harris managed the courtroom with unwavering control. She ensured that all participants understood the importance of following the rules and maintaining proper conduct. Lawyers were attentive and careful, witnesses were guided respectfully, and the jurors were fully engaged. The courtroom had become a place of learning, order, and fairness. The spectators continued to observe, noting the transformation that had occurred. They had arrived expecting drama and confrontation, but they had witnessed a display of calm authority, professionalism, and fairness. Judge Harris had turned a tense situation into a powerful demonstration of leadership and respect. Detective Ryan reflected on his actions and the lessons he had learned. He realized that true authority did not come from aggression, arrogance, or attempts to humiliate others. It came from patience, fairness, integrity, and the ability to maintain control through calm and deliberate actions. He felt a sense of humility and respect for Judge Harris that he had not felt before. Judge Harris continued to oversee the trial with focus and dedication. She ensured that all evidence was carefully reviewed, all questions were relevant and fair, and that the trial proceeded smoothly. Her calm authority maintained the integrity of the courtroom and reminded everyone present of the importance of professionalism and respect. As the trial neared its conclusion, the atmosphere in the courtroom was one of focused attention and mutual respect. The earlier attempts at disruption had been firmly addressed, and the courtroom operated with clarity, order, and fairness. Spectators, jurors, and lawyers all understood the expectations for conduct, and the trial continued without further incident. Judge Harris's leadership had left a lasting impression on everyone present. Her calm authority had not only restored order to the courtroom, but had also demonstrated the importance of fairness, patience, and integrity in the pursuit of justice. Detective Ryan had learned a profound lesson about respect and professionalism that he would carry with him for the rest of his career. The final witnesses testified and the lawyers presented their closing arguments. The courtroom remained focused on the facts and the evidence. Judge Harris ensured that every question was addressed respectfully and that the trial proceeded smoothly. The spectators watched with admiration, recognizing the power of calm authority and fairness in the courtroom. When the trial concluded, Judge Harris addressed the courtroom. Her voice was calm and clear, carrying authority without aggression. This court has conducted its proceedings with fairness, respect, and professionalism. The law must always be upheld and the rights of all participants must be protected. Let this trial serve as a reminder that respect, integrity, and adherence to proper conduct are essential in maintaining the rule of law. The courtroom responded with quiet applause. Spectators, lawyers, and jurors alike recognized the importance of the judge's words. They had witnessed not only a trial but a powerful lesson in authority, professionalism, and respect. Detective Ryan nodded quietly, acknowledging the truth in her words. He had been humbled, and he understood the significance of maintaining respect and professionalism in every situation. Judge Harris adjourned the court with a calm and steady hand. The spectators slowly filed out, discussing the events they had witnessed. Lawyers and jurors prepared to leave, carrying with them the memory of the judge's measured authority and the lessons it had taught. The courtroom, once tense with confrontation, had become a place of learning, respect, and fairness. Detective Ryan left the courtroom last, walking with a newfound awareness of the importance of professionalism, respect, and humility. He had entered the trial seeking to challenge authority and assert dominance, but he had been decisively reminded of the power of calm, fair, and deliberate leadership. Judge Harris remained at her bench, organizing the remaining documents and ensuring that the courtroom was in proper order. Her calm and composed presence had restored respect and authority, demonstrating that leadership does not require aggression, intimidation, or arrogance. Instead, it relies on patience, fairness, and integrity. By the end of the day, the courtroom had returned to a state of calm and focus. The trial had concluded,